Thank you for doing this. I first want to say that really appreciate taking the time out and to chat. So we're talking Hindsight, which is your new heavy metal virus series. Before we even get to the series, like I always like to find out what creators' backgrounds are. Like I know you've written for film and television, but like I want to start with comics first. Like,
Sure.
what's your history with comics? You know, did you read them growing up? When did you read? Like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I've been a reader of comics my whole life. I can even remember the first comic I bought with my own money. It was Batman and the Outsiders #1 in 1983, I believe. Yeah,
Was that? I'm trying to think of the cover. I think I have a copy of that issue,
yeah.
and I've
It's
like the
basically
cover I think
Batman
is
saying
slightly
these are
medieval.
my new partners. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a class. So growing up, like what comics did you generally read? Did you read a DC person, Marvel, like
yeah. I started
all
mostly
over?
DC. I guess that's where most of my fandom's from. I got into the X-Men. I'm a big original 5 X-Men fan, and then Kitty Pryde and stuff like that. So Marvel, that's probably where I'm mostly in, is that group, but mostly DC. Love Green Arrow, Question, Batman, all pretty much all the street level characters. I'm a huge fan
Yeah.
of. Uh,
With so kind of as growing up reading comics, like how does it feel to now be at this point that you're creating comics?
that's that's pretty much the dream. I mean, most people probably go into comics and then hope to get into maybe movies or films. I was trying to get into movies and films so I could find a way to get into comic books.
Okay.
But yeah, I think my first comic book came out about 7 years ago or so, and then after that, I've been doing stuff here and there, and yeah, it's pretty much the dream.
Was creating comics like always your goal, or was it always, or is it one of those things I would love to do, but you kind of had your sights on other
So
things?
that was the goal. The goal was to be a writer in general, and then comics would be #1, and then of course grew up as a big movie buff when I was a kid, and really loved movies. But then once TV started getting really good in the last 10 years or so, I've really been into to trying to break into there a lot more.
So with film, like so I know you've done TV, film, and comics. Like what were your influences for us as far as film and TV?
Influences, a lot of noir stuff. I'm a big fan of mystery. I mean, probably I've been mostly influenced by stuff like Scooby Doo, the original Scooby Doo. When I was a kid, that got me into
Nice.
mysteries, and that's pretty much what started me. But then, of course, Sherlock Holmes fan. My dad loved the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes videos. Which,
As a
yeah,
Scooby Doo fan, you'll love this.
yeah. I've got the original series in this Mystery Machine box. I should have brought it out here, but yeah. So that Sherlock Holmes, and then Batman, and I think all the detectives. That's mysteries are where my heart, I guess, is. But then I love dramas. I started to get into stuff like All the President's Men and Jaws, and a lot of '70s. I'd say '70s movies are probably my favorite.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. So before we get to Hindsight, I just want to talk about the process of creating a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, so for you, like, what is your process of just in general creating these stories? Like, do you have a particular thing that works for you?
Well, I mean, they start from different things. Sometimes it's a plot line, sometimes it's a character, sometimes it's just I don't know, like a phrase you hear, and then you just start building on it. But I think most of the time when I start getting something in my head and I can't get rid of it, then I start going for walks. And basically, if you go for a really brisk walk, I find, and you put the idea in your head after the first 5 minutes, by the time you get back, whatever idea or whatever you're trying to break, if you have like a story problem, I find by the end of it, 99% of the times I can get through it. So I find doing walking actually helps a lot with the process. And then I start, I guess, usually it started building plots. I figure, okay, this is where it's going to start, this is where it's going to end. Here's some things in the middle, and then I start jotting things down on a Word file or maybe on a piece of paper, and then I try to fill it in. And then eventually, I've pretty much got maybe 10 points that I need to get in for a single issue, and then I go through it, and that's how I usually write it. Some things get thrown away, some things get added, some things get moved around, but yeah, that's usually how I go about that.
Is there for you, is there a creative difference between doing television, film, and comics, or is it all fairly similar creation style?
Uh, It's pretty much the same, I find. Usually, of course, if it's longer, that's more difficult to get it all down ahead of time. I find that's usually the part when you get the idea, then your brain starts to break it. Well, is this going to work better as a TV show? Is this going to work better as a comic book, a novel? And then usually I go down that path, and then sometimes I get, I don't know, a quarter of the way through, and I'm like, nope, I was wrong. And then you have to go back and say, can I still do this? And if I do, can I find a different medium to use? But
has there been something you've created so far that has shifted from, like, you started off being like, oh, I want this to be a comic, and you're like, nah, it works better as a novel or film?
Yeah, Hindsight is actually that way. I wrote that as a TV pilot, and I had the Bible for the first season. And then I wrote the pilot and I put it into the Austin Film Festival screenplay competition, and actually it advanced to the next round there. So after a while, I tried to get it picked up at some places. That didn't work. So I'm like, I really want this story out. So what do I do? And since I've been doing comic books, like, I think I could get this first season into 12 issues of comic books. So that's what we're doing now.
With that, like, you said you kind of put together like a script and Bible and all that for the series. Like, what changes would you have to make from television to comic for those who don't know the process?
Length. You've got to if you think of, I try to sometimes think of every episode that I was going to write as a issue. It doesn't work one-to-one, but so you try, okay, how am I going to fit this 60 minutes of TV into 20 comic book pages? So you got to go, okay, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. And then it actually kind of helps because you distill it down to, okay, the important things are mostly all these character points, and then of course these plot points, and then all these other things. Well, I guess I really didn't need that, or I just get rid of a character entirely.
What about like the visual? Because, like, obviously comics is a very visual medium, and I know there's some creators who are very like particular in their scripts and putting like what they want on panels and how many panels per page and all that. And there's some others that are like, hey, here's generally what happens on a page. With television, I know there's like things like, in films, there's like things like storyboarding and all that, which are fairly like a mystery to me. I kind of generally understand the concept, and
Yeah.
I know it's not quite one-to-one as far as like what things are, but like for you, like what maybe had to shift as far as that, or how does that differ between all the things that you do?
For comic books, basically, I guess you want to get about 5 panels average on a page. So then you just think, okay, I'm going to start here at the beginning of the page, by the end of the page, and if it's an odd page number, you usually want to get a cliffhanger, a mini cliffhanger, so people want to turn the page. So basically, you almost, in my head, I take the 2 pages, the even number page and the odd number page, and I think that is the beginning and the end of whatever scene. Sometimes the scenes go 3 pages or something like that, but usually it's that. And then I just systematically, okay, I need this, and this. How do I break that down? How do I make a good middle point there for the page break? And that's how I usually work on comic books. And then you do, if it's 20 pages, you do 10 of those, 10 scenes like that. For TV or movies, it's more fluid, more organic. You're not worried so much about the rigidity of a page. You're like, okay, I'm going to write this scene. You hope it's not too long, but I mean, it can last anywhere from half a page to 2 pages to 2 1/3 pages, and it's more fluid. It's more about just letting that play out versus, okay, I have only an economy of space in a comic book page script, and so therefore I have to make sure that I fit it in. And yeah, sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's hard. I was just writing up another script for Hindsight. I've got these 2 pages that I have too many panels, and somehow I got to fit it in, and so I got to take this out, but then I need that, and yeah, sometimes it can be a little more difficult writing a comic.
You could be a complete jerk and go for like try to break the 9 record, because I know they tend to try to stick to 9 most, but every so often someone like goes a little bit crazier with that.
Yeah,
so with Hindsight, like, so this is your new series that's coming out from Virus and Heavy Metal. Where did the actual concept come from? Because I've read the first issue, and there's a lot of things that it reminds me of, but for you creatively, like where did the story come from in general?
I was I guess I say kid, but I was probably, if it wasn't late preteen, it was early teens. I really got an affinity for the Victorian era and all the big mysteries in life. Anything from Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster to Jack the Ripper to the Kennedy assassination, all those things really interest me.
Yeah.
And so that pretty much came to mind here as like I want to do a mystery in that time period. But then I also wanted to do something in the present day, almost like having two protagonists that are against each other, but not even in the same time period. And then, I guess it started to come together. Came up with the characters, and then, I kind of sometimes it just makes itself after that point.
For the with your other creators who are on it, artists, and want to get their names. Is it Igor Desik and then Domag? I'm just gonna butcher this. Domagoj Krip.
You probably did it better than I would have.
I'm
Mostly
horrible
emails,
with
so,
it.
yeah.
I'm so bad with names, and everyone's always like, "That's really offensive." I'm like, I'm just bad with it. So apologies to the other team. Like, how did they come on board the comic?
Well, I think I went through either Pencil Jack or Digital Webbing, their sites there, and put up ads. And sometimes I just browse the DeviantArt sites and stuff like that, and then I'll just email them. I can't remember which way I did it with those guys. But yeah, Igor's on the illustrators on the first two, but then because of he lives in Croatia, and because the way the world is now, he had to drop out. So my longest partner in crime, Matt Martin's coming on, who's an amazing artist, starting on number 3, and he's going to finish up the last 10 issues.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So with the storytelling, so I know Virus is kind of doing a mix of digital and physical printing. And this is something that's it's kind of been fascinating to me for like a lot of creators. And you kind of talked about it with the 2 pages, and you want to create like a slight mini, something exciting to get someone to change the page. With digital, like that, obviously, depending on the platform and how it's done, like you can do it almost by panel. You can do it by like page itself. You can do it by 2 pages. Like, did that impact at all how you approached it? Or, were you thinking of, hey, this is going to be done? Is it going to come out digitally? I need to think about that format as much as print.
I don't think my brain can encompass all that. So basically, it's just like, okay, this is what I know to do, the physical comic, and I know how to do the 2-page scene thing and stuff like that. So yeah, I think just like that. I think now you've given me something to think about, and I'll probably stay up nights just trying to figure out how to make it work for that, and then also the digital and like.
Well, I know. So the reason I ask is like I know there's some artists that. And it varies, and I'm not saying this is like an easy thing to do and everyone needs to do it. Like there's some artists who are really good with like that flow. Like there's a certain flow, and where digital, if you do it right, it's almost like a movie, and you get like emotion. Where printed page, you don't quite have that. Like a single page on digital, you don't have that. So I'm to me, like as much as I love comics, and I also love technology. So like the two coming together and how they impact each other it's a fascinating thing for me, and how it's going to evolve the medium over the years. Like you've seen it here and there, but there's still so many different things that can be done storytelling.
Yeah. And digitally, I mean, you got to change your entire mind if you're going to do like a webcomic that's like landscape, right?
Yep.
So you have to change your brain all like that, and to figure out every page like that. And you have to have less panels, and
and then you got vertical storytelling, where it's just literally just an infinite comic that goes on and on and on. Like there's a lot of cool things.
Webtoon I think has that, and it's just just systematically you scroll down. Yeah, it's
it can get crazy. Challenge for you, no big deal. So the comic has to deal with. So I don't want to spoil it because it really builds up to that last panel. And I'll admit, like reading the first issue, I'm just kind of like, what the hell is going on here? And then I got to the end. I'm just like, oh, okay, now it's really starting to come together as to exactly what's going on. And even then, there's still a big mystery, but it shouldn't be really a spoiler. But it's kind of like a time travel-ish aspect that's involved. For something like that, like, did you sit down with rules as to like what the science of this comic is?
Actually, I do. I love time travel, but it drives me crazy when I watch it on TV or movies about changing it, and especially like a show that it's constantly about time traveling every episode, and how many rules they broke. So yeah, I made it rigid rules for my time travel, and also it's not something that happens too often, and it happens in the first issue, and that's it. There's There's no more. Well, there's little things, but it's basically just to get one protagonist in one timeline and one the other, and then have them actually be adversaries, but never meet that way. Yeah, but the rules are definite, and they will actually come into play, both for how travel works and how being a time traveler in another time period works.
The issue is interesting as well, because you've got a fairly modern time period. Like, you never quite set what the modern is, but I'm assuming it's roughly today.
Yeah.
Within a few years or whatever, roughly modern time, and then you've got this Victorian time period that it takes place in. And it's interesting in that you really have set both of them off as a race, in two different individuals who are, and it's really hard to describe, and I just don't want to spoil it, but you have two individuals who are doing a race and both need to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
In the comic, I'm like, as a writer, like, how much were you thinking about it? Because it really is a weird reflection of the two, and it's not even like an opposite reflection. Like, it really is just kind of a similar story to both time periods from two perspectives.
Yeah. Even though the two main characters are vastly different, they both have one thing in common, that they're obsessive and that they are trying to figure out the biggest mysteries of their lives. So, so they have this just need to keep going, and they're going to pretty much not screw over everybody they know, but people are going to end up by the wayside so they can get to this mystery that is just becomes ever just involving in their life. And they have different motivations for them. I'm starting, even though I started off when I created Hindsight to be more on the character of Vincent, the one who's back in Victorian times, I've come to love the quote unquote bad guy in the present who's the protagonist. Writing him, I just love that guy now, and writing for him is just so much fun.
Has that changed at all? And people might like I don't want to quite spoil it, because when you figure out who the modern focus is, it's interesting because of everything that's going on today.
Yeah.
Has that impacted at all how you've approached that character? Because he's a shitheel. Like, he's a corrupt shitheel.
Oh yeah. He's corrupt. He's a jerk, but I find him just hilarious. But if you're talking about what just happened in the last few weeks in America, he's a lot. I think people can relate to him. I say relate to, but I guess identify him more now than maybe they could a few weeks ago, because though I wouldn't say he's racist, he's definitely doesn't care so much about people's civil rights, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Has you gone back and like changed the story at all, or like reflected in a little bit of like, basically, has anything going on now made you like rethink some of the stuff you might have done with the character in the story?
I'm gonna say no, for the sheer fact that I've started writing the script I'm on now, and I'm just finished it, but I got to go over and do a dialogue pass. So I think the script will still go out the way it is. It helps that he's an ex-cop, and that he's also, like you said, he's a shitheel. So he can be bad, and that's okay, because that's what's right now is in the zeitgeist. So
yeah. It's funny. There was another story they had to deal that I did an interview with recently, and the main character was like a corrupt cops and disgraced cop, and I'm like, it's weird that a lot of stories seem to be coming out now that's the character, but if you really think about it, it's a very common character in a lot of storytelling. So
especially in comic books. I mean, if you're not doing superhero comic books, I guess the next thing is either the detective or the cop. That's the next most common protagonist, probably. Yeah. So I'm sure more comics than any other profession would be the leads. Maybe scientists.
Yeah. Yeah. But scientists usually wind up turning into like a monster or Batman villain. Really. So part of the comic takes place in modern times, and part of it's Victorian times. How much research did you go into as far as both of them? Like, the modern time, I would think maybe there's a little bit of laws that you might have looked into. Victorian, there's a lot of dialogue that seems to be authentic. Like, I'm not an expert in that period, so to me it seemed authentic. For you, like, how important was it to kind of get as like realistic as possible? Maybe even like, did you talk to the artists at all as far as like, try to stick to like really real clothing of the time and settings and stuff like that?
Yeah, for the artists, I would send like links to images about clothing or make streets and stuff like that to make sure that they're getting that. Okay, for dialogue, I've been like I said, a Victorian Times fan for the longest time, so I've always been going in there and reading about that. So that was a little easier. But then, of course, with dialogue, you got someone like Ever, who's the guy Vincent, who goes back in the past. He needs someone to help him along the way, so he gets this 14-year-old kid as a guide who might not be on the up and up either, but
Yep.
he's very slangy. So I had to look up a lot of Victorian slang and then look up, okay, I should use this word instead of that word. And sometimes I look at a sentence, I'm like, there's no English words in that sentence. It doesn't seem like, but it's just because maybe I went too much on the Google and looked up too many words.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that Ever says that I was just like, wait, what? And I jokingly in my head was like, those are words, but
Yeah. I usually, if I do that, I try to make sure the person who answers it goes either what or says, oh, you meant this, and therefore give my answer as if, and then the person reading it's like, oh, that's what he meant.
So is there, for all the years that you've been creating and writing, like what lessons have you learned that maybe you want to impart on others, or, how has maybe your process changed over this time?
Process, in the last couple of years, brevity has been something that I've tried to take on for comic books. Just unless it's necessary for the panel, I try to keep it almost down to one sentence per panel and let the artist really use their vision, because quite at the end of the day, I can't draw a stick figure, and these people are professional artists and they have the vision that to make things beautiful. And so I should just say, this needs to happen. And you do what you do. For movies and TV, brevity just in my, not the dialogue, but my brain just went blank. Basically, when you're describing the events, descriptions, I tried to, something I would spend maybe 3 or 4 sentences on, I try to get down to like one sentence and then a half phrase or something like that, and just so to get it moving and keep it crisp and the economy of it down. So the last couple of years, I think that's changed. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head on that one.
That's fair. How did the series come to heavy metal? I don't think I asked that one yet.
Let's see, a few months back, maybe 4 or 5 months, Matt Martin, the guy who's going to be taking over the art on issue 3, we did an 8-page short, and we sent it into Heavy Metal magazine itself to have it put in there. And about the same time, or just slightly after, I saw that they were starting up Virus Comics. So since I had already had a connection or an email going back and forth with this one guy who took the short comic, I asked him if they were accepting for Virus. He said they were not. In that, the way I wanted to do is just give them a script. And then I said, because he said they want stories that are a little farther along. So I'm like, I already have these 2 issues created. What if I send this in and see if they like it? And I thought I wasn't going to hear anything. And then Matt Mendy, who's the CEO of Heavy Metal, responded back and he says, hey, we should have a conversation and try to get this done at Virus. I fainted, got back up, and the rest is history.
For working with heavy metal, I mean, like heavy metal is like, it just like has such cachet about it. Like it's just a kind of, it's an institution in so many different ways. Like as a creator, how does it feel to have that brand on your comic?
Great. I mean, just if you take that they were the inspiration for Alien, that movie has been that and Aliens is just so inspirational for me, those 2 movies. Then to think that these guys are the influence of that. That's great to be working with them. Matt's great. Chris and Ricardo are great. It's a great crew there. With
you obviously have Hindsight coming out. Like what other projects do you have in the work that you can talk about or coming up that you maybe want to pitch?
I have a 4-issue miniseries from them coming out. But probably the first issue won't be out till fall-ish, I'll say. Maybe beginning of winter, late fall, somewhere in there. It's a 4-issue miniseries. It's more fantasy-based than this one. This one's, I guess, more sci-fi. But all my fantasy and sci-fi is always like down-to-earth fantasy and sci-fi.
Okay.
I like stuff like Star Wars and things like that. But at the end of the day, what I like to write is stuff that's just peppered with sci-fi or peppered with fantasy, and it's more about the down-to-earth stuff. So this one's more on the fantasy vein. It's called the Merlin Division, and don't know if I can talk more than that.
Interesting. Intriguing. Okay. Can you at least give a hint? Is like modern time, or is it like fantasy in like a fantasy world?
It's modern times. It is our world, but if something happened different many years ago, so therefore the world is different. If that makes sense.
Intriguing. Okay.
There's no time travel in this one.
All right. I'm intrigued by this. This sounds actually it's a good tease. Let's go with that. It's a good tease. No, I appreciate it. Like I really appreciate you talking to him. We've done close to half an hour, so we'll wrap up here. If there's like anything else maybe you want to plug for people to check out, like website, social networks, stuff like that.
We just finished post-production. The crew at Strata Studios and myself on a feature film starring, I don't know if you ever watched the CW's The 100.
I know of it.
Okay, there's an actor on there, Richard Harmon, and he's the lead. It's a horror movie. If people want to go to the Instagram page, it's @thereturn_film. Yeah, we'll be navigating the coronavirus film festival and distribution landscape, so that should be fun in the next little while. I have my second novel comes out from Pro Se Press by the end of this year. It's called With a Twist. It's a mystery novel. It's basically what happens when pub waitress, a mystery comes to her into her life, and having no skills whatsoever, she tries to solve it. That comes out at sometime before the end of the year. Let's see, is there anything else? I'll look down this list here. We're also, my friend BJ Vero and I, who's a great director, we're in the semifinalists in the Legion M pitch elevator contest, which is going to have a web series in the next few months. Basically, I think it's 6 episodes where they're going to dwindle down the semifinalists to a finalist who gets their movie into development or pre-development, or just get the script going and stuff like that. So. Yeah, all those
You're
things.
busy. I hear you're busy. Basically, you're busy.
And I have a 2.5-year-old, so who's staying home all the time.
I've got a 2-year-old, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you talking. It's been really good, and I have a feeling we'll probably chat in the future to talk Merlin Division in later this year. So,
excellent.
Much appreciated. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.